Okay guys, today we're going to talk about how you divide rational numbers. Okay, now a lot of what we do with dividing rational numbers is based on a property called the inverse property of multiplication. And it basically says that the product of a number and its multiplicative inverse, or another word for multiplicative inverse, and the one I'm probably going to use more often, and its reciprocal, is 1. Okay, now the way you look at that mathematically here, or look at the symbols, is for every number a over b, where a and b are not equal to 0, there's exactly one number b over a, so that when you multiply them together, you get 1. Okay, so the reciprocal here for a over b is b over a. You basically flip the fraction or switch the position of the numerator and the denominator. So here's an actual numerical example here. 2/3 times its reciprocal, which is 3 over 2, is going to give you 1, because you could look at the 2's canceling or the 3's canceling, or you could look at it as really this is 6 over 6, which is the same as 1. Okay, so let's practice finding multiplicative inverse or the reciprocal. Okay, so the reciprocal of 7/16 is going to be 16/7. You just take, and the numerator becomes the denominator becomes the numerator. Now when you have a mixed number, like in number 2, with -6 1/3, you have to change that to an improper first. So we've talked about that already. We do 3 times 6 is 18, plus 1 would be 19, so this would be a -19/3. So that's the actual number, so when you go to do the reciprocal, it would be a -3/19. All right, and reciprocal doesn't affect positive or negative. If a number's positive, its reciprocal is positive. If a number's negative, its reciprocal is negative. All right, number 3, 6/7, its reciprocal would be 7/6. Okay, number 4, -3 2/5. Well, we got to change it to improper first. It'd be a -17/5. So then its reciprocal is going to be -5/17. Okay, so you need to be able to do reciprocal. Now, to divide fractions, we're going to use reciprocals. To divide fractions, you're going to multiply by the multiplicative inverse, or, in other words, you're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So we've already learned how to multiply. So dividing is pretty easy. Ultimately, we're going to change a division problem to a multiplication problem. Okay, let's move this up so you guys can see this better. Okay, oops. Okay. All right, and let me get rid of these words so we can get them out of our way. All right, so basically what we're looking at here is when we're dividing a divided by a over b divided by c over d, you notice the a over b stays the same. It's only the second fraction that we changed to the reciprocal. We made it d over c. And as long as the numerators, it says where b and d does not equal 0, we can't have the numerators equal 0, because that would be undefined. Okay, so like if you have 5/6 divided by 2/3, you notice the 5/6 stays the same. It's the 2/3 that we changed to the reciprocal, which is 3/2. Okay, excuse me. So, and then you would follow your multiplication rules, which we've already gone over. So let's look at the first problem here. We got 1/9 divided by 5/12. So we're going to keep the 1/9 the same, and then we're going to multiply that by, we're going to take the reciprocal of 5/12, which is going to be 12/5. Now, once you take the reciprocal, then you can apply your multiplying rules, or you can take a little shortcut. You can cross divide or cross cancel, but you can't cross divide or cross cancel until you take that reciprocal. So like here on the diagonal, I can do 9 and 12 both can be divided by 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. And then we can get 4/15. All right. Now, here we got 3/7 divided by 8. Now remember, any whole number is like over 1. So this would be the same as 3/7 times, and the reciprocal of 8 would be 1/8. And we can't do any cross canceling or cross dividing. So 3 times 1 is 3. 7 times 8 is 56. And that's our final answer, 3/56. So here, 1/3 divided by 7/15. The 1/3 stays the same. change it to multiplication, and we'd have 15/7 for our reciprocal. Now we can do some cross dividing. 3 divided by 3 is 1, 15 divided by 3 is 5, and we end up with an answer of 5/7. Okay, so here, number 4, 5/8 divided by a negative 3/4. The 5/8 is going to stay the same. And we're going to change that to multiply. Now, I put a parentheses around this so you make sure you realize that was a negative 3/4. So our reciprocal is going to be a negative 4/3. Okay. And we look, I can do some cross dividing. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So we get 5/6, and then since signs are different, it's going to be a negative 5/6. And that's our answer. All right, so now here, we've got some mixed numbers, and I put a little box up here as a little hint to remind you, and this is really important. Okay, mixed numbers must be renamed as improper fractions before dividing. Okay, so let's rename them first, then we'll deal with the reciprocal. Okay, so 4 2/3 would be a negative 14/3. Okay, divided by 3 1/9 would be 28/9. So there's our improper. So then now let's change it to a multiplication problem. We got negative 14/3. It's going to be times, and we take the reciprocal, we're going to have 9/28. Now in this one, we can do some cross canceling or cross dividing. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 9 divided by 3 is 3. And then 14 and 28 can both be divided by 14. 14 divided by 14 is 1. 28 divided by 14 is 2. Now we get, signs are different, so we get a negative 3/2, which we change to a negative 1 1/2 for a final answer. All right, let's look at number 6. Negative 6 4/5 is a negative 34/5, right? 6 times 5 is 30 plus 4 is 34. Divided by negative 2 2/5 would be a negative 12/5, because that's 5 times 2 is 10 plus 2 is 12. So then we have negative 34/5 times, it'd be a negative 5/12. Okay, and looks like the 5s can be divided by 5 to get 1. And then 34 and 12 can be divided by 2. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 34 divided by 2 is 17. So we get 17/6, okay, which we change back to a mixed number. It's going to be 2 and 5, 6. 6 will go into 17 twice with 5 left over. And since it was a negative divided by a negative, our answer ends up being positive. All right, let me move this up so you guys can see the word problem. It says Tessa feeds her dog, Roscoe, 3 3/4 cups of dog food per day. If she buys a bag of food that contains 165 cups, how many days will that bag of food last? So here, we got to think about, we basically have 165 cups total. And we want to find out, she does 3 3/4 a day, so how many can we divide that, how many servings can we divide that up to? So what we're going to do is do 165 divided by 3 3/4. How many 3 3/4 fit into 165? So we could think of this as 165 over 1 divided by 3 3/4. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 3 is 15, so that's 15/4. So we really have 165 over 1 times 4/15. Okay, so then we can do some cross dividing here. 15 actually does go evenly into 165. 15 divided by 15 is 1. 165 divided by 15 is 11. So we can do 11 times 4, which is 44. And it said how many days, we're actually finding that bag of food would last 44 days for for Tessa. Okay, guys, so I want you guys, there's some practice problems in the back. I want you guys to flip over the note sheet, try those 7 practice problems at the top, pause the notes, and then try those problems, and then start the notes back up so you can check your answers. Okay, guys, let's quickly go over these practice problems so you guys can check your answers. Okay, so for number 1, this is going to be 4/5 times the reciprocal, which will be 10/3. And I can cross divide. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. We get 8/3, and that's the final answer of 2 2/3 when we switch it back to a mixed number. Okay, number 2 will be 5/6 times 1/3, because remember 3 is over 1. You can't do any cross canceling or cross dividing, so multiplying the numerators and denominators, we get 5/18. Okay, number 3 will be 4/5 times 10/1, which we can cross divide again. 5 divided by 5 is 1, 10 divided by 5 is 2. We basically get 4 times 2, which is 8/1, which is just a whole number 8. Number 4, we start out 1 5/9 is 14/9 when we change it to improper. Divided by 2 11/12 would be 35/12. So this is going to be 14/9 times 12/35. So 9 and 12 can both be divided by 3. We get 3 and 4. And then 14 and 35 can both be divided by 7. 14 divided by 7 is 2. 35 divided by 7 is 5. 2 times 4 gives me 8 in the numerator. 3 times 5 gives me 15 in the denominator, so we get 8/15. Number 5, 15 we'd write down as 15/1 times the reciprocal of 5/8 is 8/5. I can do some cross dividing. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 15 divided by 5 is 3. And we get 3 times 8, which is 24. And like 24/1 would be just plain old 24. Number 6, 9 1/3 would be 28/3. And then 3 1/9, it'd be a negative 28/9. So the reciprocal, we'd have 9/28. And again, that's negative. Now, 28s cross cancel, both be divided by 28 to get 1. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 9 divided by 3 is 3. So we basically get an answer of 3, and since the signs are different, it's going to be a negative 3. So our final answer is negative 3. And then we have a major hamburger chain in the U.S. is famous for its square burgers. The burgers are 2.5 inches on a side. How many burgers can fit across the grill that is 30 inches wide? So we're basically taking 30 and dividing it by 2.5. How many 2.5s can fit into 30? In other words, we're going to take that 30 and divide it into 2.5-inch lengths. So basically what we have is 30/1 divided by 5/2, or 30/1 times 2/5. And then 5 and 30 can both be divided by 5. And then 6 times 2 gives us 12, and that would be basically, we asked how many burgers. So this is 12 burgers will fit across the grill. Okay, so now, of course, we're doing pre-algebra and we're in 8th grade, so we got to look at how algebra applies to dividing. Okay, you can divide algebraic fractions the same way you divide numerical fractions. All right, so you're still going to keep that first fraction the same, so this would be like 5 over 3ab. And we're still going to take the reciprocal of the second fraction, so that 15 is going to end up in the denominator, and that ABC is going to end up in the numerator. And the numerical part, we can still do that cross-dividing the same way. Like I can see on the diagonal here, 5 divided by 5 is 1, 15 divided by 5 is 3. We also can do the same thing with the variables. Like here, we have an A's on the diagonal. A divided by A, in both these cases, would be 1. Same thing with the B's. B divided by B is 1. B divided by B is 1. Okay, so all we have left here is like 1 times 1 times C, so all we have in the numerator is a C. And then all we have in the denominator is 3 times 3, which is 9, so our final answer is C over 9. All right, so 5AB over 6 is going to stay the same because that's our first fraction. Okay, we're going to change this multiplication. 7 is going to become our numerator. 10b is going to become our denominator. And again, I like to look at my numbers, numerical numbers first. So 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. All right, and I can do b divided by b is 1 and b divided by b is 1. So we have basically 1 times a times 7, so that's basically 7a. And then 6 times 2 gives me 12. So my answer is 7a over 12. All right, so why don't you guys pause the notes, try these two practice problems, and then start it up again when you've got it done to check your answers. So pause. Okay, guys, let's quickly go back over these practice problems. So in this one, we're going to have mn over 4. That first fraction stays the same. Reciprocal of m over 8 is 8 over m. And the numbers we can do divide by 4 and get 1 and 2. And then m divided by m is 1. So we're left with 2n, and then just a 1 in the denominator, so it'll be just 2n. And number 2 here, 5x over 8y stays the same. Take the reciprocal here, we're going to have 16y over 10. I'm going to deal with the numbers again first. So I can do, well, 8 divided by 8 is 1, 16 divided by 8 is 2, 5 divided by 5 is 1, 10 divided by 5 is 2. So in the numerator, I basically have 2, I can do y divided by y, which is 1. So I have 2x when I multiply there, over 2. Now, if you notice, I actually could have divided those 2's. 2 divided by 2 is 1, so really our final answer here is x. So you got to check. Sometimes if you might miss a cross divide, you got to see, like here, the 2's line up and cancel. All right, guys, we'll work more with dividing tomorrow in class, so you can get some more practice with it.